The wine glass was already filled when I sat down. My father stood at the head of the table, holding his drink high, his face carved into that unsettling smile he always wore when something didn't quite add up. The table was filled. My mother, my younger brother Jason, his girlfriend, and a couple of extended relatives I barely knew anymore. The whole thing was thrown together last minute, allegedly to celebrate my big exit. I'd just sold my startup, a cybersecurity firm, for just over $11 million. And suddenly they remembered my name. My father cleared his throat. "To my millionaire son," he said. His voice echoed in the vaulted dining room. "May your success bring you closer to those who love you." Everyone laughed politely. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Jason gave me a thumbs up like he was part of the victory. I nodded, lifted my glass, and then, casually, reached for the wrong one. Or rather his. He wasn't paying attention. No one was. I clinked glasses with him, the switch already complete, and took a long sip.
He mirrored me.
I smiled. The evening dragged on with toasts, fake affection, and shallow conversations. I'd spent the past 6 years grinding nonstop while my family watched from a distance, asking for money every few months like it was owed to them. But tonight, they were full of warmth. Too full. My father, especially, couldn't stop smiling. That same smile, tight, smug, cold behind the eyes. Then came the first sign. He blinked hard, rubbed his forehead, tried to steady his breathing. "Everything okay, Dad?" Jason asked. He waved it off. "Just a little hot in here, isn't it?" 2 minutes later, he stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. His glass shattered. My mother screamed. He hit the ground hard, his limbs convulsing. Forks clattered. My aunt covered her mouth. Jason jumped up, yelling for someone to call 911. I just sat there, watching. They crowded around him, chaos spilling across the room like broken wine. I looked down at the glass I drank from. Still full. Still clean. "My name is Ethan Blake, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when your own father tries to poison you, you stop calling it family." This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't drama. I know exactly what was in that glass. See, when you grow up with people who treat love like a loan, you learn to pay attention. When you become the only person in the family with real money, real freedom, you become a target. That night, something shifted. Not in them, they've always been who they are. It shifted in me. I stopped pretending this was loyalty, or love, or blood. They toasted to my life, hoping I wouldn't finish the night. But I did. And when the EMTs carried my father out of the house, unconscious, I raised my own glass quietly. A toast. Not to him. To the beginning of the end. Because the glass was clean. But the truth? Run. Success, when you come from nothing, is supposed to feel like freedom. But for me, it felt like a collar. I didn't come from legacy. I didn't have a trust fund, or an uncle in venture capital. What I had were 18-hour days, 3 years in a 1-bedroom apartment with no heat, and a laptop that froze every 5 minutes. That's how I built Cibitrix, a cybersecurity tool I started coding in coffee shops while my friends were out drinking or dating. It took 4 years before anyone noticed it. 2 more before it sold. When the acquisition finally happened, my name hit the trades. My inbox blew up. My phone didn't stop ringing. But the first people at my door? Family. My father, who once told me I should get a real job and stop playing hacker, suddenly called me his genius son. My mother cried when I handed her a check to pay off the second mortgage. Jason asked for a car. Just a used one, nothing crazy. I bought them a house in Westlake. Nothing extravagant. Just safe, quiet, stable. A thank you, I told myself. But the thank you became a transaction. The shift was quiet at first. "Can you cover this month's HOA fees? Your mom's back is acting up. Think you could handle her chiropractor visits? Your brother's between jobs again. Just for now." I justified all of it. I wanted to be the good son. I'd missed birthdays, holidays, and hospital visits building my business. Maybe this was how I made it up to them. But the gratitude never lasted longer than the deposit cleared. Eventually, they stopped asking and started expecting. Every conversation ended with a price tag. Every visit was a subtle negotiation. Even my success became a punchline. My father once told someone at a barbecue, "Yeah, he's the rich one. We just work for him now." He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. The worst part? They made me feel guilty for resenting it. They'd say things like, "We're proud of you even if you don't visit much. You're lucky you can afford to help. Not everyone has your talents, Ethan." What they meant was, not everyone has your wallet. The deeper my bank account grew, the shallower our connection got. It wasn't love anymore. It was balance sheets, credit transfers, favor tallies. I wasn't their son. I was their ATM. One night, I overheard my father on the phone, pacing the hallway while I sat in the guest room with the door cracked open. He said, "If we keep him happy, he'll keep the money flowing. Just don't spook him." Spook me? Like I was a donor. Or worse to Mark. That was the night I stopped pretending. They didn't celebrate me because I succeeded. They celebrated because I cashed out. And now, sitting across from them at that dinner, I realized something else. They didn't want a son. They wanted an exit plan. There's a moment, right before something breaks, where everything feels too perfect, like a calm surface hiding a whirlpool underneath. That dinner? It was too perfect. Table set with the good plates. Candles burning low. My father already sipping wine when I walked in, which was unusual because he never drank before the food was served. He always claimed it was a waste of a good vintage. But that night, 3 glasses already poured. Mine was waiting. He looked up at me with a smile I'd seen before, not warm, not proud, calculated. "Sit, son," he said. "Tonight's special." The days leading up to that dinner had been off. First, there was the call from my mother asking if I'd finalized the will yet. You know, just in case anything ever happens. Said she saw a documentary about how young millionaires die without planning. Then came the headaches, the fatigue, the strange taste in my protein shakes that I couldn't quite place. I chalked it up to stress until the dizziness hit me while driving. I had to pull over and sit in a gas station lot for 30 minutes before I could see straight. I went to the doctor. Nothing definitive. Just keep an eye on it. Blood pressure, maybe. Stress again. But deep down I knew. The clue came by accident. I dropped my keys behind the couch one morning. While reaching down, I spotted it, a tiny white pill, wedged in the carpet. I'm no pharmacist, but I have a friend who is. I sent her a picture. "That's a benzodiazepine," she texted back. "Strong sedative. Who's taking that?" No one in the house was supposed to be on anything like that. At least, not officially. I didn't say a word. Just kept smiling, nodding, and planning. By the time the dinner invitation came through, my instincts weren't whispering anymore. They were screaming. And then the glass. Poured ahead of time. No one else's was fresh. Just mine. My father raised it, his eyes locked on mine. "To my millionaire son," he said. He never said things like that. He was the kind of man who'd call you soft for celebrating birthdays. Suddenly, he's making toasts. That smile again. Like he already knew something I didn't. I felt my throat tighten. So I smiled back. And while they passed around bread and dipped into casual conversation, I switched our glasses. It was simple. Easy. They weren't watching. They never watched me closely, not the way I watched them. What happened 30 minutes later? My father's hands began to tremble. His smile faded. He coughed once, then again harder. And then he collapsed face first into the mashed potatoes. Panic broke out around the table. I stayed seated. Because, deep down, I wasn't surprised. I took the wine glass with me when I left the hospital. No one noticed. They were too busy acting shocked, rallying around my father, pretending it was just a bad reaction to blood pressure meds. The same man who mocked doctors for decades suddenly had a condition they forgot to mention. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just slipped the glass into a sealed bag and left. And 2 days later, the results from the private lab came in digitalis. A naturally occurring poison. Slows the heart. Slips past most standard tox screens. If you're lucky, it just makes you sick. If you're not, it stops the heartbeat cold. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. That's what they expected. Instead, I did the one thing they feared most. I started thinking. First, I called my lawyer, told him to pull my current will and put it under legal seal. No copies, no updates, without in-person verification from me. Next, I quietly installed surveillance in my home. Not the cheap kind. Encrypted, off-grid. Motion-detected voice triggers. I even wired the lockbox in my office with a hidden mic. Then I booked a session with a financial advisor, not to move my money, but to trace it. Every wire. Every trust. Every shared signature. Because it wasn't just the wine anymore. I wanted to know how far they'd already gone. That's when I found it. A draft copy of my will saved to my mother's shared desktop, clumsily edited. Payouts altered. Power of attorney reassigned. Even my business shares were listed under alternate beneficiaries. They weren't subtle. They were impatient. So I made one last move. I created a fake version of my will, professional, legitimate-looking, signed and notarized by an actor friend in a fake office setup I designed myself. This version? It gave everything to them. Every account. Every property. Every share. It was bait. I left it printed in my study drawer, exactly where a greedy hand might look if they thought I'd never wake up. Then I went to sleep, camera rolling, eyes closed, waiting. Because if they wanted to play games, I'd show them how I win. The night was picture perfect. My mother lit candles she hadn't touched in years. My brother wore a suit he'd never bought himself. Even my father shaved, a detail that told me more than anything else. Something was coming. They said it was a celebration dinner. For my latest acquisition. For the success they never clapped for until now. I showed up with a bottle of Chateau Margaux. Something rare. Something expensive. Something I wouldn't let them poison. My father waved it off, already lifting a full glass of red. "We already opened one," he said, smiling too wide. To my millionaire son. He passed it toward me, the glass already poured. I paused, gave him a look that made him chuckle. "You suspicious now, boy?" I laughed. "You trying to outdo me?" And while they all looked at the TV behind us, while my mother adjusted the volume, while my brother made a joke about yachts, I switched the glasses. Clean. Quiet. No theatrics. Just sleight of hand and muscle memory from years of ignoring danger in plain sight. I raised the glass meant for him. He raised mine. And we toasted. Dinner went on. Roast lamb. Garlic mashed potatoes. 4 smiles. The occasional when are you finally settling down, thrown in like seasoning. My father took another sip. Then another. My hand didn't shake once. 29 minutes later, just as my mother brought out the pie, he dropped his fork. "Dad," my brother said. He was sweating, pale. Then came the gasp. The shaking. The sudden silence in the room as my father gripped his chest and tipped sideways in his chair. "Call 911, my mother screamed. I leapt to my feet. "What's happening? Is it his heart?" My brother cursed, fumbling with his phone. The panic was instant. So was the performance. Except I wasn't panicking. I was watching. The paramedics arrived fast. Too fast for my family to hide much. They asked questions. I gave answers. They took my father, unconscious but breathing. And as they wheeled him out, my mother looked at me with glassy eyes. "Did you?" "No," I said softly. "Did you?" At the hospital, they ran toxicology. I didn't ask. I already knew. When the doctor said the words digitalis poisoning, everyone gasped like it was new information. I just sat there, hands folded. My name is Ethan Blake. And 30 minutes after my father tried to poison me for my money, he drank his own plan. They thought I was the naive tech kid. The one too generous for his own good. But they forgot what made me successful wasn't code. It was pattern recognition. The hospital reeked of antiseptic and denial. Machines beeped rhythmically around my father's bed. He was awake now, weak, groggy, alive. Barely. A detective stood in the corner, arms crossed, notepad tucked tight under his arm. His eyes weren't on my father. They were on me. My mother sat beside the bed, her hands shaking. Not from grief. She hadn't cried, but from calculation. Her mind was already working overtime trying to rewrite the narrative. Food poisoning, she muttered to no one in particular. He's had shellfish reactions before. The doctor interrupted, holding a clipboard and a scowl. It wasn't shellfish. It was digitalis. A very specific, dangerous compound. Not found in lamb. The detective nodded. That's consistent with the toxicology report. Someone spiked his drink. My brother flinched. My sister took a slow step away from the bed. I didn't move. I cleared my throat, and all eyes fell on me. I know exactly what was in that glass, I said, calm as a courtroom judge. Because I had it tested before he drank it. My mother's face dropped. My brother's jaw tightened. You knew, he said, barely above a whisper. I suspected. I confirmed. I reached into my coat pocket and handed the detective a second envelope, the one with my private lab's results, time-stamped and signed. He flipped it open, scanned it, then nodded. Matches ours. My father groaned softly on the bed. Still too out of it to lie. Still too guilty to speak. Why would we ever? My mother began. I cut her off. Because I stopped being your ATM. Because you started asking questions about my will. Because you're used to me bailing you out. And this time, I didn't. The detective glanced between us. You said you switched the glasses? I did, I said. His plan ended up in his own bloodstream. The room cracked open with silence. Later that night, as the police launched their investigation, I made one final move. I called my lawyer, froze the accounts connected to my family, revoked access to the home, terminated the trusts, pulled back every thread they used to pull me close. My brother tried to call. I let it ring. My mother emailed me a paragraph of blame wrapped in denial. I forwarded it to my attorney. At 2:11 a.m., I stood in the hospital parking lot, phone in hand, watching the night settle over the city. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. They didn't just try to poison my body. They'd been poisoning my peace for years. And now, I was cutting off the supply. I didn't just take back my money. I took back my name. I left without fanfare. No farewell dinner. No note. Just closed doors, canceled access, and silence. Within 72 hours of the hospital incident, I had relocated. Different coast. Different phone. Different name on the mailbox. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. In Larkhill, Oregon, a small creative city nestled between mountains and ambition, I started over. No headlines. No handshakes from people who only knew my bank account. Just people building things for the love of it. I began investing, not in startups looking to scale fast and cash out, but in people with purpose. An app developer who coded from his car. A ceramic artist trying to escape a violent household. A former foster youth launching a mental health podcast. I didn't want equity. I just wanted them to win. It was the first time money felt like freedom again. A few months later, I launched the Safe Start Foundation, a private nonprofit for kids raised in chaos. No red tape. No bureaucracy. Just direct support. Therapy, housing, mentorship, creative outlets. I never attached my name publicly. The spotlight didn't interest me anymore. But something else did. Truth. Late one night, I wrote out everything. The wine glass, the pills, the years of emotional debt, the betrayal wrapped in birthday candles. I posted it on a community blog for survivors of toxic families. No names. No revenge. Just raw, surgical honesty. I went to sleep with zero expectations. By morning, it had over 200,000 shares. People from every walk of life wrote back. This is my father. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I've been too scared to admit. Grief rippled across the screen. But something stronger rose with it. Liberation. I kept writing. They reached out, of course. My brother left voicemails, cold at first, then desperate. My mother sent a letter. Said I misunderstood everything. My father never contacted me. Cowards rarely do. I kept every message. Unread. You can love people. Forgive them, even. But you don't have to let them keep building their houses on your spine. One morning, I watched a girl from our foundation read her first poem aloud to a crowded room. Her voice shook, then steadied, then soared. And I realized they wanted me to be their ATM, their plan B, their soft place to land after breaking everything they touched. But I wasn't that. I never was. They wanted my empire. I built a kingdom without them. A year passed. I didn't count the days. I didn't mark the anniversary. But when I stepped off that stage at the TechBridge Innovation Conference back in my old city, the air tasted like closure. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Investors lined up. But all I could think about was a house that once smelled like Sunday roast and quiet resentment. I drove by my childhood street, not out of nostalgia, just confirmation. The house was empty. The grass was overgrown, paint chipped, windows dusty. A foreclosure notice flapped against the door in the wind. The family I once knew disbanded. My brother had moved states, chasing money he never earned. My sister had gone silent after her third failed startup, funded by guilt and GoFundMe pages. My mother, I'd heard, was living with an aunt, still blaming outside forces for our collapse. And my father? He sold the last of his vintage watches online to cover a lawyer's fee. No one hired him again, not after the quiet investigation that followed the toxicology report. No charges filed, but doors quietly closed. Legacy shattered. Standing across from the house, I felt no heat in my chest. No anger. No hate. Just clarity. They hadn't just underestimated me. They built an entire future around the belief that I'd never stop giving. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small steel flask. Not out of habit, but ritual. I raised it in a mock toast, standing under a gray sky in front of the house where it all started. Not for them. For me. They gave me a target, I whispered. I gave myself a future. Later that evening, back at the conference gala, someone clinked their glass against mine and said, "To family." I smiled politely, but inside, I toasted something else. To peace. To boundaries. To choosing yourself without apology. Because here's the truth. I gave them everything. My time. My love. My trust. My money. They answered with manipulation, betrayal, and, eventually, a poison glass. But that night, I didn't just dodge a murder attempt. I buried a legacy of abuse. That night, I raised a glass. But it wasn't to family. It was to freedom.